A ballerina's perspective, from performing with New York City Ballet and Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater to publishing poetry books and mentoring kids and teens. Join us in a weekly discussion with experts to gain mental health clarity and achieve growth and moral consciousness. Give our show a 5 stars, comment, share, and come along for the ride. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth, Grace, and Gratitude podcast. Today we're actually going to talk a little bit about life after ambition with Amil Niazi's bold debut, Life After Ambition, a good enough memoir. Amil is a writer and producer. She writes the Cut series on parenting, the hard part, and covers work and motherhood and how the two intersect. Her writing has been appeared in the New York Times, The Guardian, and The Washington Post. I love this topic, so excited to chat today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I think it's such a wonderful topic. I think so many professionals that have achieved a certain level of skill or achievements are actually shifting on this spiritual journey. That's why I started my podcast talking about like spiritual healing, spiritual awakening, because once we reach like a plateau, a certain level of we feel it's self-acceptance, but I feel like it's like external acceptance as well. I think that creates some kind of shift in our minds to be like, what have I kind of like achieved internally as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think for me, it was a collision of events, having kids, turning a certain age, and in the pandemic, just it all forced a real reckoning. And I think that's true for a lot of people in terms of career and ambition and what it means to succeed. I think that's a conversation a lot of people have been having in the last few years.
If you're ready to shake off that daily stress, come join us for online beginner, adult, ballet, and yoga classes each week to connect with the flow of movement and the art of ballet into perfect synergy. Come as you are and learn to love your body a little bit more and gain strength and flexibility with each class. All are welcome. Sign up at balletartsmovement@gmail.com. First class free. TeloVital supports focus, energy, immunity, sleep, recovery, and resilience. Start feeling better today on a cellular level with Zeolite, super green juice, micronutrient gut support, and more. Get over 50% off your first order for TeloVital. Link in the description of the podcast. Yeah, 100%. And I think like there are so many different parts of going through achievements, and there are different stages and levels of achievement. And it's so beautiful how in the intro of your book, there was a story of your son graduating kindergarten and kind of like going through that part of like graduation. That's like the first part of a child's life that they get to feel some level of accomplishment and also some level of like, oh, what is the next step, and feeling kind of chaotic or feeling like thrust into the world. And it's so interesting because I grew up dancing ballet, and one of my like favorite professional ballerinas, Megan Fairchild, she recently retired, and in her caption she wrote the motto, "You are more than your last show." So I thought that was such like a beautiful moment of understanding the value of accomplishment and also not letting it fully define you, but also like allowing the next steps, the continuation of your life, the progression. I think it's such a like a beautiful kind of like awareness, and I think a lot of people are gaining a deeper self of awareness of what it means to achieve and how happiness should be tied into that. What are your thoughts about ambition and the connection of happiness to it?
I mean, I think I was talking to my husband about this the other day. It's like, a lot of maybe my old definition of ambition and maybe a lot of people's idea of it is like achievement, not really for the sake of, growth or personal evolution, but just achievement for the sake of achievement, that usually isn't tied to happiness, right? Because it's sort of just for like you mentioned, external validation. It can be for other people's approval. You're doing it because you think that's what your parents want you to achieve, or what you think you're supposed to achieve, because your peers are doing it as well. And I often think that type of ambition is not tied to happiness, because it's also not necessarily coming from within. It's a very much like something you're doing to appear as though you are successful, as opposed to having real metrics of success that are self-defined. So I think I've been much happier in a kind of post-ambitious world, where my metrics of success are much more about feeling enough, feeling content, feeling gratitude. So I think there's an idea that ambition and happiness are linked, but I really think that it's really much more about having like achievable goals that are are tied to something more meaningful than just I climbed that ladder, or I got that job, or I got that promotion.
I love that. I think it's so true. There's this sense of escapism where we kind of, like you mentioned, reaching that next level of highs. And it feels kind of like once you achieve it, and then what? You just keep going and going. But if you stop to think while you're doing it and who you're trying to do it for, I think really shifts. Like, for example, today is National Nothing Day. So I think like the idea of doing nothing and to take a step back from the busyness that we were so grilled to just be busy all the time, it kind of led to burnout. It led to anxiety, and it led to kind of this incessant need to like going on a hamster wheel, not even being in tune with yourself. A lot of my clients who go through inner child healing, that's what I ask them. It's like, what are you doing this for? Like when you're choosing a career or a partner, what is this for? Do you understand the connection that it has to your soul, to your desires, to your mission, to your purpose? There are so many parts of our own progression and growth in this world. And I think when we connect the ambition to the soul's desire, that helps us progress at a pace that is comfortable for us. Like some people won't even understand what your passions are, and if you're doing things, it might seem weird from the outside. Like I started my own blog, just like posting my journals, which could be weird. I'm expressing my feelings, I'm sharing my emotions to a whole group of people, and people were like, why are you doing that? It's super weird. And I was like, I don't know, it just feels like I want kind of to connect with people. I want to feel more connection. And it started from there. I started to have clients coming in to be like, wow, I was feeling that same thing at that age or at that stage in my life. And this helps me. And I was like, wow, I didn't even realize that. I think the more we become authentic and share our feelings and our truth and our journey, that leads us more into like kind of like an ambitious centered life.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's true for sure. I think doing things professionally that are rooted in an authentic desire for connection or creation.
Podpitch is the first and only software that finds, writes, and sends pitches to podcast hosts from your actual email address. Podpitch will make sure you get podcast bookings, guaranteed. Link in the description of the podcast. ClickFunnels easily build any type of online business and sales funnel in record time, no matter what your product, service, or niche, without any tech design or experience whatsoever. Try the ClickFunnels 14-day free trial. Link in the description of the podcast.
Um, I think will always lead to much more connectedness. It leads to, I think, a greater satisfaction with your work when you're doing something that's about yeah, like a true meaningful um, desire to, whether it's to create something artistically or whether it's to um, be vulnerable in order to connect with people. I think that's always going to feel better, and it's always going to lead to a much more kind of natural success, however you define that, because it's you're not kind of pretending, and I think a lot of us pretend at work, and we pursue ambitions that are predefined for us by our parents or society, or something that isn't necessarily what we want for ourselves.
That is so true. And I think the awareness of that brings so much clarity and peace to our psyche, because many of us are healing from performance based decisions, relationships, connections, and the idea of like toxic positivity and performance behavior. It's so ingrained in us. I think it takes a second to be like, oh wow, I am actually acting not my true self, but I am trying to, maybe it's even subconscious often, to be liked or to be accepted in a way, that the performative behavior becomes so people pleasing. And in a sense, it's kind of like avoidance of your true self. And that for sure breeds like anxiety and then lack of self connection. I think we have to give ourselves also the space to be like, to allow ourselves to be authentic. And even if we have fear of not performing to somebody's standards, I think that's a hard lesson to get over, because a lot of people struggle with remaining true to themselves because there is this deep rooted fear of rejection or of feeling like not included into a space. What advice would you give for people who are in that space and they want to be authentic, but they don't know how to like not perform?
I mean, I think, it's the first step is really just to ask yourself, what is it that you really want? What is it that you really want out of your career? What is it that you really want out of, um, you know, holistically your life? And what would success look like for you in that world? I think even just starting that conversation with yourself, I think, can lead to a lot of surprising revelations. I think for me, it it started with just saying, like, what would happen if I step back from this uh, this job that I thought was my dream job, and what would it look like if I left it and tried something different? It's still in the same um, sphere, but just taking a step back, that really started to unravel a lot of things for me, and that led to, okay, what is it that I would like to do if I don't want to do this? And it was clear for me that I wanted to be writing, and then um, writing what, and that led to, I think, um, this during the pandemic, having a newborn, having a toddler, trying to work at the same time, I was echoing authentically what a lot of parents were feeling, and that led to more work. And it also led to work that felt very genuine and very authentic to me, and which meant that a lot of people could relate to it. And it really snowballed from there. But the very first step to that was me just asking,
Unlock your best life with Soul app. Book a holistic wellness experience with a trained guide and start changing your life today with compassion practices, inner healing, food and diet, and so much more. Tap into a healthier and happier life with the number one purposeful living app in the US, the Soul app, link in the description of the podcast. Sanger Daniel's online seminar promoting a positive message of self-healing with bioenergy work together with live seminars and remote coaching. Use code BIO20 for a 20% discount for our audience. Link in the description of the podcast.
if I don't want to be doing this, then what do I want to be doing?
That's wonderful. Yeah, that idea of like reflection, self-reflection is so beautiful, and it's such a gift we give ourselves to try to understand our psyche and try to go back to our childhood or moments of clarity to rediscover parts of ourselves. So yeah, I love that. And I think the idea of the message for millennials, they were told to dream big. And what do you think was missing there? And what do you wish you received more as kind of like a guidance into your coming of age, entering adulthood?
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, dream big is like a great and wonderful thing to give to any young generation. I wish that I'd had more tangible steps, like a bit more of a roadmap of what that could look like. Because for me, it was like dream big, but um, there wasn't an awareness of, well, who's actually getting to live that big dream? And it usually is people who have access to wealth, who have the ability to take uh, unpaid internships that lead to bigger opportunities, or who are able to, like, there just wasn't, I think, more transparency about what it takes to actually get to those lofty dreams. And so I think I was pursuing something without the awareness that we weren't all on an equal playing field. So, I think it's great to say like dream big, but I think we're at that place now, or certainly a lot more transparent about like who gets to have those jobs and what does it actually look like to be able to, for example, take a staff writing job in New York City that only pays 50K a year. Like, who gets to do that? Because it leads to bigger opportunities, and it's usually people who can afford to do that. Um, and so I really, if had I had a bit more awareness of like those types of things at a younger age, I think I would have been less hard on myself, and I think I would have then perhaps pursued a slightly different path to uh, to writing, or I would have just taken bigger risks because I would have realized that, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you fail, because there, yeah, I almost had nothing to lose anyway. So I should have taken bigger risks, but I was so afraid to, because um, I just I didn't have a safety net. So I was much more cautious, I think, in the risks that I took at a younger age, and I wish I hadn't been. So I think that, yeah, just more honesty and transparency about those types of things, I think goes a long way. And I think that you see maybe almost too much of that now, with Gen Zs, but I do think that it's important um, to have transparency, especially about the creative sector, and those types of jobs that can often feel really um, scarce. And with scarcity comes a lot of fear. And so, I just think a lot of people feel locked out of those opportunities.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Thank you for sharing that. I think that realization of the risk factor is huge because everybody is always kind of like playing it safe. And whether there are a lack of opportunities or people feel like if they fail, they have nowhere to go from there. So there are certain things to consider for sure. And you share so much of your beautiful writing in a column, The Hard Part, and it has garnered a loyal and influential readership, including fans like Chrissy Teigen, Ava DuVernay, and Seth Rogen. Do you have like a favorite article that you wrote and that really kind of resonated with a lot of people?
I mean, I definitely think, I wrote a piece called "Losing My Ambition," which went very viral. That connected to a lot of people because it was essentially formed the the first kernel of the book, which was just really, yeah, reimagining what life looks like outside of this very specific system of success that I felt a part of. And yeah, I had so much feedback from that piece. I had so many people reach out to me to say that they felt the same way. They'd just never been articulated before. And that was years ago. And I think since then, it's only that feeling has only grown, I think, amongst people. And, I just had a launch party here in Toronto for the book. And there was a lineup of people, an hour long, who wanted to chat about just what it feels like when someone says out loud what you've been thinking. So yeah, I think that piece definitely kicked off a lot of what forms the basis of this book, and I know a lot of people really connected to that sentiment.
That's amazing. Congratulations. That's so inspiring to kind of put out your message into the world and feeling the ripple effect of the collective understanding your message. It's your book, Life After Ambition, explores the freedom found when we stop trying to outperform ourselves. What does freedom mean to you now? And what have you learned most about yourself with outperforming yourself?
I think freedom for me is just the ability to say no to things. It's the ability to do nothing on a more regular basis. I think that before, like, tied to the fear of failure, and I also had a fear that if I stopped saying yes to opportunities, however small, um, however stretched it made me, then I would be missing out, or that those opportunities would suddenly stop. And I think that for sure led to a sense of burnout. So yeah, freedom for me now is like just the ability to say no, and to feel confident in that idea that saying no to an opportunity now isn't saying no to all opportunities forever.
That's a beautiful distinction. I started teaching ballet, and all of my students have felt like this somatic healing with movement, and it actually shifted a lot of their confidence and their ability to kind of like be present. And the more that we're present, we're able to kind of like figure out to be like, oh yes or oh no. We don't have to kind of like overly attach to things that we don't feel connected to. And I think the idea of finding presence within yourself, it's kind of easier to respond to things, not always obviously, but sometimes it helps to, when we're more centered in our body and feeling present, we can be able to be like, oh yes, this resonates more, so I can say yes to that. And if something doesn't resonate, we could feel intuitively that we can say no, and it's totally okay. So I think it's a great message for people who are learning about their own intuition and their own ability to tune into their own wants and needs. And it's totally okay to say yes to the things that resonate and no to the things that you feel don't.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Let's see. How can people connect with you and also get your book?
Yeah, you can buy the book anywhere at your local bookstore. It's available pretty much everywhere. Um, I signed some copies at Barnes and Noble just last week.
Amazing.
And I can find me on Instagram at Amil Niazi.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Emil, for coming on the podcast and sharing your inspiring work and story with our audience. I'm sure they're going to learn so much about the value of true ambition and post ambition to kind of like reconnect to their value and feel inspired to just align to presence and the journey of self-acceptance and self-love. So thank you so much for coming on.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.